we are now live. Hey, everybody, this is Aaron, and I've got Laurie Fincham with me, which I don't know if this thing rotates, but I think I'm pointing to you.
Yeah, you are.
Good. So Laurie and I, how long have we been talking about trying to do this? A good while now.
6 or 8 months, I would think.
Yeah, it's part of that. Most of that's my fault. I've been slacking. So I'm glad to have you back, man.
Well, I'm glad to be back. I always look forward to your sessions. They're really good.
Well, I really appreciate that. Yeah, I just enjoy talking this stuff. It's really fun. If anybody is in the chat, if you guys have any questions or anything you might want to kick toward Laurie, feel free to post them. I can't guarantee that I'm going to get all of them. And I think maybe we'll try to do this for about an hour and then maybe set a cutoff time at about an hour. And then maybe we'll try to pick up back again some other time later. So, Laurie and I were talking backstage. So, Laurie, I don't know if there's anything that you in particular would like to bring up. If not, I thought an easy softball question that I would throw over your way just to get a conversation going, and we can see where this goes.
Sounds good.
Okay, so then let me think, which one do I want to ask? How about this? This is one I'm just from an enthusiast perspective. I'm going to ask you, it's a different one that I mentioned earlier, so I hope I'm not tripping you up here. What piece of kit, and you like how I use the word kit there because I'm trying to sound authentic. What piece of kit excites you? Do you find yourself drawn to particular designs, looks, or features when it comes to audio equipment?
Well, it depends on the year. When I was very young, I used to love Bang & Olufsen stuff because it was just really cool, and the receivers looked like a sort of slide rule system and so forth. And I bought a lot of that equipment, but in my middle years, I didn't spend so much on equipment because I was just surrounded by it at work, and so that it wasn't really. So I used to do all the work at work, but I like nice finishes. I like rosewood, which I know there isn't so much now, and I like piano finishes. I just think they need dusting, so that's a bit of a pain. The wife will always complain about that, but I would like things that weren't too complicated. I just want something where I can go to it and turn up the volume, and I don't want something with 11 channels and you have to spend a whole year setting the thing up. I'm not a great believer in, I shouldn't say this, in multi-channel sound. Although I was with THX, I understand why they tried to do it with the cinema, but I didn't think it was very successful. You were always in the wrong place. You were too near to something that you shouldn't hear, and so forth. And I loved the cinema when I was a boy. I used to go every night to the cinema, and I love the theatre aspect of it. I think that's what it was about. I suppose I was a frustrated actor or something. My friends would say I was just a show-off, and that's probably true. But nowadays, I don't have that feeling. I'm not a big fan of an amplifier that costs 30 grand or something like that. If you can't drive it, I could understand why somebody would like it, because we all dream, we all want to get hold of something, but it never happened in my time, because when I was younger, I couldn't afford it. And when I got older, I didn't need it because I had all the stuff at home and at work. Don't know if that answers it, but.
Yeah, no, that does. So what are you running right now? I think I know, but Tim, is a friend of mine, has asked that question. So what's your system like now?
It was put up by Andrew Jones. So I was retiring and I had a cupboard full of really expensive Brule and Kerr equipment, measuring microphones, oscillators, and so forth. So I did a deal with him, and he he came up from Los Angeles, and he bought me a couple of tower speakers, and then I have a center channel, but the center channel has to go below the screen. You know, you can't do anything else about it. I have a Yamaha amplifier, and I also have a couple of prototype benchmark AHB2. This is the one that we did at things, and you know, it sort of works. But what I find irritating with watching television now is that the control over the sound levels is really poor. So sometimes it'll come on and it's really loud. Other times you can't hear it. So quite often when I'm listening to a movie late at night, I'll quite often listen on headphones, because then at least I can do the dialogue, and I usually manage to get the subtitles off the screen. I do not want somebody else tell me what they're saying, you know. And so it's all across the end of the room, and then of course I have many DVD players. So there's Blu-ray, there's HD, DVD. I have about 5 of those, and so I have a lot of those recordings. I have a big tranche of the HD DVD, the one that came out in the brown case before a Blu-ray came out, and I'll always put one of those on in an evening, just because some of them are brilliant. I don't know if you ever saw the I think it was the Blu-ray version of North by Northwest, which is quite an old movie.
No.
And it was absolutely brilliant, you know. And then somebody messes it up, you know. They do a really good job of it, and then marketing get hold of it and decide they know how to improve it, and so forth. So that's what I have, but I also, and I have a 77-inch OLED, LG OLED, and I have the same one in the bedroom. So I have 2, and the one in the bedroom was a THX certified one. It's a sharp one. It isn't OLED, but it's pretty nice. So if I'm in the middle of watching something, I can go to bed and I don't have to miss the bits and pieces. And I've got the little speakers that you recommended, the white ones that go on the wall, the powered.
Oh, the Cali Audio.
Yes. Yeah. And I had to modify it because the feed into those was coming from the optical side, and I didn't have any gain control, and I wasn't going to get out of bed turning the volumes on the back of the thing. So I bought a little box which takes the optical in, and then remotely allows me to change the gain.
Okay.
And that's, you know, it was $30 or something. I can't remember what it's called, but it works. It works really well, and got over the frustration of, you know, when you're in bed, you're in bed. I think you probably agree, you know, and you know, particularly if it's cold.
Yeah, and it's been cold here lately. Yeah, you mentioned the Calis before. It's amazing what you can get for little cost these days.
Oh, I just think they're nicely done. They're well finished, and they work, and they both pretty much like one another. I haven't attempted to measure them. I'll have some measuring gear up and going in probably in a few weeks' time, which I need to do because I've laid out some real lawn outside, and I want to be able to put systems in there and record with them above the ground or on the ground, you know. And because I'm doing a lot of work. I'm not doing a lot of work. I'm doing a lot of discussing and experimenting with John Vanderkoy in Canada. So we have chats and so forth. And he has a professor's point of view, and I have I don't know, like a general manager of a factory, you know. Well, it has to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
and you have to fix it, you know. So we enjoy that.
Well, that's neat. I think this is a good question from Nick. What project stands out most when you think back on your career?
Well,
Maybe something.
I suppose the most important was when we first used FFTs in the early 1970s, and I was doing a calculation of, you know, the pound then and the pound now, and I worked out that the cost of the computer in the lab was, I think it was £65 million, which you have a job getting past your boss. But my boss absolutely insisted on it. He would just spend his money, and we weren't making that much money then. We were quite small, but that was the most exciting time because we built the lab, and we spent 3 times on the lab than what we spent on the HB Fourier analyzer, because it all had to be very quiet, and it had to have good acoustics and so forth. So that was exciting. I had fun early on in my career designing the speakers for guitar players. So all the famous guitarists used Celestion speakers.
Yeah.
And the speaker that we had is called the Greenback, and it has a little green plastic cover, and the chassis is gold. And my boss said, well, the chassis needs to be gold because that's expensive. And he said the cover is going to be that cover, because I was a I forgot what you call it. He was a sort of daredevil during the war, and they had that color on their fatigues because, you know, they were obviously trying to do them. So that's why it was like that. And we used to sell thousands to Vox and Marshall, who were the big names, and that was exciting because I knew a lot of the really good players before they became famous. You know, so we used to run a jazz club, and probably one of the most famous guitarists who ever played with us was John McLaughlin, who came from the same part of the country as my wife. Not that made a difference.
Yeah.
And he wasn't known. None of them were known, and they were all grubbing around to get gigs and so forth. But he spent a lot of time, and I remember one of the first times I met him, I got him a 18-inch woofer from Goodman's to put in this box, which he wanted to try out. He was a really nice guy for somebody being that good, you know. And he was in the gig. We used to call him Johnny Mac, and the guys came and said, "Have you heard Johnny Mac's going with Miles?" So he was going with Miles Davis, and we found that almost impossible to believe. But then you realized why it was so. Miles Davis wasn't going to spend a fortune on a new young player. He simply wanted a young player who was really good.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting time, and I did that for about 17 years, which had nothing to do with designing speakers, but it did give me an outlook on what was important, what people listened to, what they liked, and you know, you learned how to prepare the program for. I used to call all the tunes because I would make sure that they weren't playing everything in the same key and the same sequence. You know, so I was trying to move it around so that the people on the floor were having a good time, and we were, because it was a Italian club, and we learned how to drink. We were serious imbibers. But I still had a job, so I actually survived. I didn't get stuck being an alky and so forth. Anyway, so that's what I have. I have the big Ashley furniture seats for the home cinema, so they sort of sit in an L. So I get the best seat because I'm sitting right opposite the screen, and you can do them up and down, and they're pretty comfortable. And every seat has a USB to charge up your phone and stuff like that. So, and it's all in the kitchen. It's sort of like a modern kitchen. So the kitchen is behind there and has a big central table where you prepare meals, and then you have on the other side you cook them. So I like to cook. I think cooking is fun. I'm not as good as my wife at it, but she doesn't count. She just looks, and she's really good at that. So I don't know if does that answer
I think it did.
the most interesting.
Yeah. So I was kind of wondering when you were saying some of that, I was thinking, I know I'm certain things have changed between when you were in the industry and now that you're retired. But I kind of wonder, what I run into a lot is still there's a lot of snake oil.
Yeah.
Still there's a lot of people who believe certain things. There's a lot of businesses that are selling certain things that I personally think are just ludicrous. And I'm kind of curious, do you as an outsider now, do you feel like that has maybe grown, or do you think maybe like the ratio of legit scientifically pursued better sound versus snake oil, is that ratio kind of the same to you from what you can see, or do you feel like one thing has grown more than another?
Well, we were in England, and what you need to understand is that the BBC controlled all the sound that was distributed and so forth, and they were very particular about how it sounded. So they didn't have any decent recorders. So they would be doing a symphony concert, and they would be sitting with the score in front of them, and they would know what was going to happen, and they would up and down the fade. So not so fast that you heard the background noise going up and down, but that was beautiful. So we were exposed to the BBC way of doing things, and an awfully large number of people, and a lot of them still now, do make copies or make the original ones to order. And they were just really good people. They were like Bell people, they just sort of instinctively knew everything. And they had a big research place in the south of England. And we used to go down there, and so that was different, and it was very English. The BBC was really cornball. Everybody hated it. They would play a boogie woogie piano once every 3 weeks, and eventually you did get jazz programs, but it was awful. I used to listen, and so in the end I listened to Voice of America. So they would get Oscar Peterson and so forth. So that was the only place you could hear really good music. It wasn't the quality wasn't very good because it was done with a crystal on the end of a stick. I've forgotten what they used to call those, but that's what we had when we were kids, to listen to the sound. It was fun to do, and it was fun to look back on 62 years and see how the bits sort of work together. And I suppose I was proudest, really, of the things that we thought about doing, as opposed to we couldn't just go out and buy the equipment. It didn't exist.
Yeah.
We had a good tape recorder and so forth. And Raymond Cook was very good with the wallet. He did all that. But then in the end, that we ran out of money, which you sort of invariably do. It's very difficult to be successful and to spend all this money, has to come in.
Okay.
Which one do you want to see here? Are you interested in the OHM audio channel?
Yeah, that's actually where I was just looking at. I think that's a good one. So I'll read it for anybody who's just watching this to the side, because sometimes I'll watch back YouTube videos, but I don't watch them. I just listen. So the question is from Ohm Audio Channel, who's a good dude. A question for Laurie: when picking a speaker for home cinema use, what characteristics would you prioritize over others? Example: distortion, directivity index, resistant to compression.
Well, I wouldn't do distortion, because I don't think we know enough about how we hear it. Directivity index, I would. Resistance to compression. In a speaker system, all the music below, I don't know, maybe 150 hertz has the same peak level as all of the rest of it, but it doesn't happen so often. And the reason is simple. When you're playing music for people who are dancing, there's a limit to how high the tempo can be and how low it has to be. So what you want with the low frequencies is you want the voltage and the pressure swing when you want it, but you don't want it all the time. In the middle, that's where you get compression. In the middle, it's all about the voice coils getting warm, and you don't have to put up with that. You can predict exactly how hot a voice coil will go, and you don't have to listen to it. You can calculate it. You know when it gets hot, it will reduce the level. Now at high frequencies, it's sort of like the bass end repeated. You get very big peaks, but you don't get them very often, except in the case of the high frequencies, you will get, if you get a Wynton Marsalis playing some Haydn trumpet concerto, those notes are on for a hell of a long time. So you will get compression, but all these things, you know what they're going to be. And I suppose my question would be why anybody would want to play that loud in a home theater. I can understand in a real cinema, but most of us get told off when we turn it up too loud and the neighbors complain and so forth. So distortion, not so much. Directivity index, yes. Resistance to compression, you can design it out. I'm saying you can know exactly what it's going to be. You want lots of volts. Yeah, that's what you want.
Yeah. There's some guys in the States who have massive home theaters. Even I would consider middle class guys with massive home theaters. And I mean, we're talking 15 channel Atmos type setups with 8 15-inch or 8 20-inch or 18-inch or whatever size subwoofers. And I'm thinking, goodness gracious, are you really listening? Do you need that much? But who knows?
Well, I think if they want to listen to that, but I wouldn't. I think a lot of the Dolby theory on this doesn't really hold any water. Speakers don't fire up to the ceiling and it comes down again. Because the ceiling isn't usually flat. The thing is not got a speaker in the stop doing that, but it's what they need to do in order to get a bit more excitement. They want customers going to the cinema, and to be honest with you, I would be so sad if the cinema collapse,
Mm.
and everybody just streamed because it is the theatre, and you go there to be with other people. You know, sitting at home on your own, or listening to 130 dB SPL, it's a bit antisocial, isn't it? Yeah, well, not anti. It's sad. I think I can see why they do it. It's like having a big boat or a fast car or something. But they don't get a chance to show it off, because they bring somebody around. they put their hands over their ear and
there's some friends of mine out in the Midwest. They call it Midwest. It's M-Wave, and I guess it stands for Midwest Audio. I don't know the rest of it, but it's basically like a big get together, and they go around and do theater tours in this area to some of these guys who have these big theaters. And I think that's a really cool way to not necessarily show off your system to people who are already in the hobby, but hopefully to get new people into the hobby and to experience something different than their little Bluetooth speaker sitting on the counter. And I kind of wonder sometimes, are we a dying breed? The audio person, are we a dying breed? Because I often listen to my cell phone, when I'm doing random things. I just put my cell phone down and I'll corner load it, put it up against the wall and corner load it and get some additional SPL out. But there's really not a lot of time for me even to sit and listen to speakers unless they're the ones I'm reviewing.
Well, hi-fi was really born because it was an easy way of getting your girlfriend into your bedroom to listen to stereo. I mean, that was what it was all about, and so it was really popular. But now you can do that on the phone, I gather.
Yeah. You don't need them. You don't need them to come over anymore.
It's still being pushed by JBL is still making these very loud systems. And there's probably a reason they're probably trying to do it for outside, where the listener is somewhere away from the speaker, and they want to be able to hear it because it's concerts, and I mean I saw who's the blind organist. Really, Stevie Wonder. He used to be called, when I was a kid, he was Little Stevie Wonder because he was about 13. And I went to see him at a show, and they had organized him coming into the place. And when he went up, there was nobody looking after the mixing disc. Why would do? So you couldn't hear him. There was a guy next to him playing the trumpet, and I thought that was absolutely disgraceful. That would be like giving Paderewski an out-of-tune piano. There's no, and they can't afford to have the people in the audience. I guess is the point. It's all about drama, isn't it? It's got to be bigger. There's more people at the show, and I follow Formula One, and the important thing is that they get 350,000 people together. But it doesn't make any difference because they don't spend enough in Vegas to get the promoters the 50 billion or whatever it was they were trying to get. It's business, and I think it always has been, and that's not going to change. I don't think so.
Have you ever been to an F1 race yourself? I haven't. I'm just asking you.
No, I haven't. I used to go as a boy with my dad, and he liked hill climbs. So in England, they used to have these tank testing hills, and they were all mud. And so you got in this little. It was a motorcycle engine car. And you would tear up and you have to get everything exactly right, or the wheels just start spinning and you go down again. And the guy who was doing it at the time was the young Sterling Moss, who became quite famous. I do watch the Formula One because Lewis Hamilton is my hero, and he's he's such a good driver, and he's very articulate, you know, and so I think that's due to start soon. And when I do, it's on at 4 a.m. or something like that. You know, but
That's dedication.
well, but it's becoming more about money. I say becoming more about money. It's always been about money. And in the younger days, people had their own cars. They used to make them. They used to bring them to the track and so forth. And then they die because they weren't safe, you know, or they catch fire and so forth. It's got a lot better now.
I would hope so.
Yeah, well, I think there was an element of the RAF in the Battle of Britain. You know, you sort of went up, and if it didn't work, you were dead. But you accepted that. You know,
Yeah.
I nowadays the guy who's winning all the time now, of course, is the Max Verstappen, who's the Dutch guy, and there is no doubt that he's a first-rate driver, but he happens to be with the company with one of the top designs for that company, for Red Bull, and he's an Englishman because that's what they used to do. Nobody paid them any money, so they like tinkering with cars. Anyway.
Did you see that I just threw up there? Somebody asked, can anyone stop Max this year? So when you mentioned his name, I threw this up
Well,
there.
yes, I think they can, because I think that the Mercedes are not a lightweight company. They made the assumption that the obvious way of doing it, sort of rather Germanic thing, was going to help them to win, but it didn't. They've now moved around their personnel and they put some time into it. And I think that Red Bull expect to have a harder time. And the other guys, you know, you've got, I forgot what they call now. There's the other company in the south of England. Well, they all tend to be in England because there's lots of good guys and they're cheap, I think, is the answer.
Okay. All right. Here's one for you.
The answer is no.
No. The answer is no.
He will win one or two.
How old is that guy? Like, he looks like he's in his mid-20s.
He's 23 or 24. He's ridiculous. You know,
That is ridiculous.
He really has a feel. He came up as a what do you call them? They're not called Kit Kats. What do you call the little wagons that people have when they're kids? I never had one. I just had a soapbox when I was a kid.
Karting.
But they do this, and then the big companies go around and look at them and decide whether they've got it. You know, and there's a whole thing about how you drive, and you have what they call short corners and long corners, because you have to, and one of them involves touch. If you haven't got the touch or feel, just having the fastest car won't do you any good. You know, you're just going to bang into the railings or something. I mean, and they are stupefyingly fast. You know, they go up to, I think, nearly 200 now.
Well, if you go fast enough, the corners are just straightaways at that point. You're right.
Yes,
There's no such thing as a turn at that speed.
Well, the tracks are all they're some of them are old tracks, like the Silverstone in England, and they did this recent one in Vegas, where Liberty, I think, put all the money into the thing, and they sort of turned the high street into a track, and it was sort of all right, but it was done at the wrong time. So what happens if you show it at the wrong time in order to get a big audience? It's so cool that the tires don't work, and the understanding the tires and how they generate grip and allow you to corner is one of the tricks of the trade. Karting, thank you. Whoever said that.
Yeah, there was a couple. Who knew that I had this many people that watched F1? I had no idea. I've never watched F1 in my life.
Well, you need it's going to start soon.
Well, maybe when I'm tired of measuring speakers and reviewing them, I'll take up F1. I'll take up watching F1.
Well, it does. They don't last very long. They're usually about 75 laps, and each lap is about 120, 140.
That's not as bad. It's not like NASCAR. Down here in Alabama, everybody likes NASCAR.
Yeah, well, that is lethal. That is really quick.
They go around like 400 times. I'm like, guys, it's just a circle. I can't watch this anymore.
So Todd T says Verstappen's dad was also an F1 driver.
Oh, yeah.
He was, but he wasn't that successful, which is, I think, why he wanted his son to do that. He wasn't a big player.
Oh, yeah. Well, Audio Guy says he got hooked watching the Netflix show, which I do recall seeing an advertisement for that. So I guess it's like a real life thing or something.
Yeah.
That's funny. You got some good comments down there. NASCAR live is cool, but on TV is sleepy. Oh, me.
I recently bought an inexpensive Denon to play 4K.
That one.
Room correction for.
Yeah. Basically, the room correction that came up was horrible.
You should stay away from room corrections because they're based on a fallacy, and there's only one guy who does it properly, and he's a Frenchman. I can't think of his name now, and I met him with Dick Small when I was at KEF, and he said, yes, this guy is really good, because Dick was really solid technically, and he always knew if somebody was a bullshitter or not, which was good,
Yeah, that's good. Call him like he sees him. Yeah, I tend to prefer manually tuning, but I haven't used auto EQ in a long time now.
Well, but they do it wrong, and it started, and they do too much of it. They take it. You can't do it at high frequencies. I'm sorry. You can vary the shape, but it has no meaning. You can correct the bottom end, and I've certainly done things with 4 subwoofers and DSP for that, and that was really good. And we ended up putting it in a Ford SUV. And so if you have, let's say you have a subwoofer in a room and you put it in the corner, what you're really listening to is 7 speakers and a real one. So if you imagine the corner is 3 bits of mirror, so when you put the thing in there, so that is what's playing into the room. And so, of course, it isn't very good, because you've made a subwoofer that's quite large. There's 8 of them, and and they won't combine together. So what we did was we said that when a speaker is in a room, what can happen is either the signal from each speaker is in phase, so it sums together, or they're out of phase, in which case it vanishes. And you can't correct for a sort of 0 in the response. It isn't possible. So what I thought was, I thought if we change the phase response to each speaker, we should be able to adjust the phase so that it does just add, and it doesn't do the thing. And we did that, and we've written it in a patent, but nobody's ever used it. and we were able to get the sound in 4 seats in the car within 1 dB of
Wow.
one another, and that we use the speakers that are already in the door, and you can do that. Phase is really tricky, and people use it or think about it in the wrong way. You know, with all the stuff on multiple woofers was done by Todd Welty, who worked for Floyd, and they came up with a scheme, and I didn't agree with it because what they did was they just put in dips, and because they weren't doing DSP or anything. It was just like a spreadsheet. And I wanted one where up to about 200 hertz, we got all the bumps and dips out of it, and you can do that. Nobody ever used it though because it was really complicated. You had to know what you were doing, and the guys who did the work had to know what they were doing too, and most of them didn't because they'd never done it before.
Yeah. Anecdotally, I've messed around with car audio systems for 15 or 20 years now, I guess, at this point, and getting phase between the front speakers, the front door mid basses, and a rear mounted subwoofer has always been hard to do until we were given this thing in a particular DSP that allowed us to vary the phase, kind of like an all pass filter, I guess. I think that may actually be what it is. And then once that became available, it was a game changer.
Yeah. Well, that's what we used, was all passes, and but the patent officer wouldn't allow us to get away with it.
Of course.
So we spent a fortune, and we just wasted the money.
Well, that stinks. Here's a good question. Was there anyone in the industry, past or present, that you wish you had an opportunity to work with, or was truly appreciative that you were able to work alongside? And you can name multiples if you don't want to do that.
I wish I had an opportunity. You know what? I don't think there was anybody. I think that I was so lucky working with Raymond. Everybody I wanted to work with, I worked with, whether it was Peter Baxendale or the BBC and so forth. He made it his business to hunt out all the top people in the field. That's what he did, and he would introduce me as if I knew what I was talking about. You know, so I used to have to keep quiet. You see. But he would introduce me to everyone, you know. So whether it was Ray Dolby or whether it was all the American guys, Sid Shaw, we just had a talk with anyone, and we worked with all the people in the universities. We did that in Cambridge and in Sweden, not Sweden, in Denmark and so forth. So I can't think of anybody. Oh, you know what? I tell a lie. I would love to have met and done some work with the guys from Bell, who were just geniuses. You know, this was the guy who did the little compression driver that I had, and they made this thing in 1930, and I got it when I was on the road, and I cleaned it up in my lab, and we sold it off for $7,000. But when we played it, it did really good bass out of a compression driver, and it was because it was just beautifully suspended and put together. It was just magical. And I did manage to meet one or two of the people at Bell, sort of later in my career, and they were as good as I expected. So that would be. I was such an admirer of Bell and the way they went about doing and what they did. It absolutely worked. It was brilliant.
Okay. You talked about the BBC dip, and I'm familiar with it. Or you talked about the BBC, not the dip.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You talked about BBC. So I'm familiar with the BBC dip to an extent, but here's the thing. I've seen conflicting stories, and I'm curious if you might have better insight into this. One story is that the dip was purposely put there just so sounds wouldn't be as aggravating, because at that time recordings were particularly annoying, I guess, in the
you
1 to
talk
3K
about
range.
the Gundry dip.
Yeah. Yes. You're right.
This was the BBC used to use Butterworth filters because that was about all they could afford, because if you build up the section you end up with a hell of a lot of money in the thing. And if you have a Butterworth filter, as you know, if you move in one direction around it, it adds up to give a 3 dB peak. And if you go around the other way, it's completely antiphase. It doesn't work. So I think the guys in the van who were basically the music balancers just heard it and decided it sounded better. But there is a logical reason why it could have worked, and it is because they used Butterworth filters.
Okay.
So look, there was an awful lot of madam, with the BBC. There was a lot of, they would say things because we made all the BBC monitors.
Right.
When I started work, the first company made the bass speaker.
Okay.
The second company I worked for made the tweeter, and Kef made the whole lot.
Right. Yeah.
So we were involved with them for a hell of a long time, and they were the guy who was really good there was a man called D.E.L. Shorter, and he wrote about everything to do with speakers.
Mm-hmm.
Really lovely man, and he definitely knew what he was talking about.
Okay.
So what else have we got here?
Let's see here. Oh, DIY audio guy said he had a professor in college that worked at Bell Labs, but he was an econometrician. That's a tough word to say.
Yeah.
Say that 3 times fast. Let's see if I missed any of these questions up here. I may not have. I think I'm all right. Okay, here's a question. I saw it. I didn't quite understand it. Question for both of you. What are your thoughts on current day audio industry censorship and intentional blocking of advanced power and circuit innovation that demonstrate weak points in all gear? I'm not sure what this question is about. Do you have?
Can you put it on the right hand side? I can't see it.
You might have to scroll up.
Oh, I see. Okay, all right.
I'll leave it on the screen for a second.
No, the last one I've got is a professor in college who works at Bell Labs.
Yeah, you'd have to scroll about halfway. I can just read it to you again. What are your thoughts on current day audio industry censorship and intentional blocking of
what ship?
Censorship?
Oh, censoring of the
Censorship, yes.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And intentional blocking of advanced power and circuit innovations that demonstrate weak points in all gear.
Well, have you any idea what he's talking about?
I do not know. So I was wondering if you might, maybe we'll come back to that one if he wants to try to clarify that. So here's one, and it, do you have any thoughts on SIL versus ported speakers in cinema settings?
Yes, I do, and
Okay.
I don't like vented enclosures, and when they do them in the cinema, they bent them, but then they put some of the low frequency stuff on there, and the thing is just shaky in the breeze, so it's distorted and horrible.
Yeah.
So I don't know why they do that. You should use closed boxes, and for the cinema, if you make them strong enough, they'll work just fine.
Yeah.
But we also had the problem that they wanted them to be more efficient, and they thought that reflex enclosures are not more efficient. All right, so let me explain that.
Okay.
If you take a speaker and put it in a box, and you get the right amount of flux density in the gap, you can get a high pass Q of 0.7 or something like that.
Okay.
If you increase the flux density in the thing, you'll have a greater damping, and so it'll be further down. And what happens when you put it in a reflex enclosure, it adds a lump at the bottom that compensates for the bottom end being overdamped. And it only does it over a very narrow band. You're just adding a nasty little bandpass filter. And you get, as you know, all the sounds in the middle frequencies, and you get chuffing, and you get, I think it goes back to the old days. People just thought that reflex enclosures were so simple.
Mm-hmm.
And it sort of was in a way, but you shouldn't do it that way. And I just think it's going backwards. I think JBL always liked reflex enclosures because their business was making very sensitive drivers for guitarists to play. So they always liked JBL because they had the big gray magnet on the back, and they had lots of flux density, and it was overdamped, and so they needed a bit of extra boot at the bottom end to compensate for it falling off. I mean, they didn't think about doing EQ, which they should have done.
Yeah.
So one of the companies that does a really good job with the design and EQ is the one in I think it's in Finland. Do you know who I mean? They're really nice, and they make cast aluminium enclosures that are sort of egg-shaped. I can't think of their name now.
It is an EQ, or it has EQ? It's a speaker that has EQ.
Oh, it does have
you're talking about Genelec?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
And the guy who ran that, Ilpo Martikainen, who died, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, he was a really nice and a very, very gifted man, and he did a really good job. And they've done their own thing. They're expensive. They don't give them away, but they just do a really good job. And the balance is a bit Germanic. That is, it's sort of tends towards constant power, so you end up with a rising top. But I think they have a little gizmo in there to calm that down. So we did find that countries had a way of balancing things for their market, because obviously they knew their customers, and that was. Oh, David Cross, to clarify, I'm a patented inventor.
Yeah, I don't think I mean, I don't have any insight into what that sounds like something that he's dealt with somebody personally, but that's not me. I don't know what goes on in the industry. I just review stuff. So when it comes to electronics, that's like way out of my scope.
Yeah.
But you mentioned Genelec. So before we have to end, because I've maybe got about 5 minutes or so. I'm
Yeah.
not sure if you've seen the speaker, and if you have, you can tell me, and we don't have to discuss it. But I'm trying to find. Let's see here. Yeah, I'll just have to bear with me, everybody, while I get this page to load. Just taking an inordinate amount of time. I'm having trouble today with some of my words. I made a video earlier, and I said the same. I think I said the word probably 5 different times before I felt like I got it right. So I was just like,
you have to lay off the vodka. During
yeah, that's exactly
presentation.
what it is. That's exactly what it is. Where did that picture go? Oh, me. No, I'm finding good photos, but I need to find a better one. I guess I could go to their website and look at it. I really just want you to see this if you haven't seen it already, because I think your mind may be blown, or you may say, oh, well, that's neat. But I cannot get their website to actually load. Okay. The best I can do is what I'm about to show you. Let's see here. Entire screen. Is that it? Okay. I'm going to try this. This speaker.
What is that? What is that?
This, I'm going to explain this the best I can. I may fumble this because I don't have any personal experience with the speaker. I'm only going on what I've seen. So they got, I think, a 15-inch woofer on each side. You can't see my mouse, unfortunately. Oh, yeah, you can. Okay, so there's a 15-inch woofer right here on this bottom right, and there's another 15-inch woofer on the bottom left.
Yeah.
I think that might be a 12-inch driver. And then there's let's say it's a 5-inch coaxial, tweeter, and mid-range. And then these are additional mid-ranges. So this is all supposed to play as one point source.
Yeah.
And it's a monster speaker. It's really interesting. I don't know if you've seen it, but
who did it?
This is a Genelec speaker.
Oh, it is. Yes.
They just announced it.
There is a reason for doing that, but it's a technical reason.
Okay.
Which means that it almost certainly works. But when you do technically difficult things, you have a really hard job persuading people that it's important. Just being good at what you do is a start. It doesn't get you ahead of the game. But it's just really that Genelec have this in their blood to do it well and to do it interestingly, and they make these ideas up that are technically correct. But just because you can get the response shape right doesn't mean to say it's going to sound right, and that's always been the same.
I would like to hear them. They look very interesting. And one thing that I found interesting is that I believe they said that these mid-ranges, they vary the high pass on them. I think it's between 200 to 350. I may be wrong, but it's something like that.
Yeah.
But it varies, I guess, while it's playing music. So it's a dynamic high pass, which I'd never heard of before.
No, me neither.
It's wild. I'm gonna see if I can find that.
But how does it know what's coming?
Well, I'm not sure. There's a better picture of it too. And like I said, I may be butchering this because I did a video on this back in September when they first announced it, and I was watching their discussion on it, and then I kind of did my take on what I think this might mean.
Did they offer it to you to try out?
No. I've actually been trying to get Genelec to send me some stuff for about 2 years, and the conversation just kind of broke down. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but that's okay. It happens. Let's see if I can find that. I think that you might be interested in this just from an engineering perspective, to open this up when you get some time.
Yeah.
And to check this thing out. Oh, so here's their response.
It's all right.
Yeah, this here.
I've seen better.
Yeah.
But maybe not at this level.
Right. I think when you consider how big this thing is, and what it's doing, I would really like to hear it. The only thing that I'm curious about is there's this directivity error here. I guess that's about 50 or 60 degrees, maybe. I'm not really sure, but kind of curious if that would make it potentially sound a little bit dull in the upper mid range, but this is me just judging based on measurements that aren't really complete. So I try to be careful with doing that. That's a big old speaker too. I know somewhere in here. Oh, well, here you go. These are pretty interesting. Vertical, horizontal. Not very wide though. That might be an issue for me personally, but anyway, I'll close that out. If you want, I will send you that link.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, you can
Because
do that.
like I said, I thought you might kind of be interested in it. I mean, it's a oh, here it is. Crossover, lower woofer, front woofer, 5100 hertz variable. Front woofer quad mid range, 150 to 250 variable. I mean, I don't know. That's some crazy stuff.
It says here, did I ever work with Earl Geddes?
Yes. Did you?
We didn't do projects together, but we had a close working relationship because he was the original mastermind at Ford, and hello. So, okay, I'll buzz it back. It's the chief.
Uh-oh.
So okay, well, I think we've covered a lot of stuff. It's not been very technical. It's been sort of anecdotal, but
But
it might be interesting for people as to what you might get out of a journey in the audio business. It doesn't just have to be boring, and you go off to China all the time.
Yeah. Well, I think that's important for people to understand too, is that it's not just all data, right? So it can be a career. You can do a lot of fun things with it. You're being beckoned, so I will let you go, sir.
Okay, right. Bye.
All right.
Bye.
We'll talk to you later.
Cheers, Aaron, and
Cheers.
I'll see how it went. Yeah. All right. Cheers. Bye.
All right,
Thanks
bye.
for setting out.